Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Butterfly Princess Show. This episode is the third episode, the concluding episode of my mini series with Jack Mussard, who's a PhD student in biology, and he's also a private tutor of maths and English. Now, we're going to be discussing that today in the final episode. So, hi, Jack. Lovely to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you as well, Steph.
So, could you tell me about, firstly of all, your maths teaching? Because you teach maths at a range of levels from Key Stage 1 up to Key GCSE. So, what does that involve?
Yeah, so it involves quite a mixture of different activities, and as you say, abilities as well, with students who are learning maths. So I do teach some very young students. Some of them have been as young as sort of reception a year that year in primary school, and it does go all the way up. From the kind of higher years in primary school, so right up to students taking their SATs exams, and preparing for those, and then going into Key Stage 3, so the beginning of secondary school, and then GCSE as well. So the kind of activities that I do can vary, because certainly with the primary school students, and the younger students in general, I try to make the sessions quite interactive and a bit more fun, and quite visual as well. So using lots of pictures, and games as well, because that's what I found particularly the younger kids like to do during their sessions. But then with GCSE, it's a lot more exam focused. So I'll tend to use many more past paper questions during the sessions to really prepare them for their upcoming exams.
And why did, because obviously you teach English as well as maths on a private tutoring basis, which we'll talk about the English in a bit, but
Mm.
why did you want to teach maths privately?
Well, I'm quite interested in maths anyway. I've got a science, that's my specialism, and some of that involves maths, and that can be quite interesting. Learning about the mathematical part of science. So I particularly like the association between science and maths, and when you have to use maths in science. Um, and yeah, I like the challenge of maths as well. Some people might see it as a bit of a puzzle to solve. So that aspect of it, the problem solving aspect, is quite interesting just for myself. But I also, just with tutoring in general as well, like helping students understand maths, because I appreciate that for some students it can be a very difficult thing to learn some of the things that they have to learn. Um, Even maybe for their GCSE exams are quite challenging. So it's quite rewarding, helping students really grasp things in maths that they might have found quite difficult to learn in school as well.
And I suppose nowadays, especially in education, maths is sort of a functional skill. You know, many universities and colleges look for potential students to have the basic functional skills within maths.
Yeah, so um, there is this part of going to, say, further education or higher education, so higher education like university, and yeah, particularly for the maybe the science subjects, and other parts like economics. And yeah, maybe even in parts of philosophy as well, there's an element where maths is quite a fundamental skill to need, and that students need to get a grasp on. So yeah, I suppose it does come into quite a few different areas, and it is an important thing for students to at least have a basic understanding of things. I remember even with I used to do some tutoring at Fulham Football Club, and there were some students who were on a different program there, but they still needed to do functional skills, and that involved maths and English as well. So even in places like that, those sorts of functional skills that you mentioned are quite crucial.
Yeah, and you talk about, when you talked about, doing, activities, maths related activities, especially with the key stage one children, not more or less the GCSE students, because it's more exam focused. And you talk about doing activities based around animals, and that's interesting because I know we talked about that previously, but because you're studying for a PhD in biology, and we talked about that in episode 2 about animals and the whole of the biology, how that sort of interconnects. So how do you sort of connect that experience when teaching maths?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, that connection to the role of color in biology, because part of the reason I use sort of animal oriented, I suppose, or it's all the activities that I have associated with animals, because you can look at a few different animals and see quite a variety of color. So if students have got an activity where they've got, say, different cards with different animals on them, and it's something that they can interactively can pick up and they can look at and arrange, it can be quite intriguing for them, seeing these different colors and seeing the different shapes of the animals as well, and trying to integrate maths with that. So just as one example, I might give students, say, let's say 6 different cards with the different animals, and also on those cards on the back there might be a number, all sorts of different numbers. And then what I can just say to the student is, well, find the tiger, and then find the octopus, and then look at the numbers on each of those cards and multiply them together. And so it tends to be, I've found, a bit more interesting doing it sort of that way, especially for the younger students, than just kind of maybe giving them a plain worksheet that just says multiply these two things together. It tends to be a bit more motivating. So yeah, for students, seeing those I think quite interesting animals, those different sets of animals, different colors, different forms, can be a nice way to get them engaged with maths.
And I just wanted to finish off the subject of like maths, because you've said, but I'm just referring to my notes, but
Yeah.
um, it's sometimes um, a difficult subject for students. I mean, talking for myself, I'm 31 now, and obviously, so I've been through all my education, and I hated maths because of the fact that I have, my disability, cerebral palsy, and, part of that is uh, struggling with coordination, and a part of that is struggling with spatial awareness. That obviously plays a big role in the subject of maths, and I always struggled with that. And when I sat my maths GCSE, my teachers had very low expectations for me, but I actually did better than they expected. I've actually done better than people expected me to do throughout my whole educational career and life in general, but that's a different subject story. So that's just my personal reasons of struggling with maths, but there are a lot of people who struggle overall with the subject of maths, and I suppose that links in with the fact that there is a higher maths for mathematics tuition, especially in the subject of GCSE maths.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just on that last point, I've found that even though I've got the science background, that's my specialism. There's as you say, a really high demand for maths tuition now, because of the level that students have to perform at in order to get good grades in maths. And some of the things that they have to learn, I just think back to when I was doing my maths GCSE. And there's definitely things now which they're having to understand, which are a lot more difficult in my view, to what I had to do. So in fact, what I had to do before I really started doing maths tuition properly was to teach myself some of the things, and sort of both relearn, but and then also learn some completely new material in order to deliver maths lessons. So, and I'll admit as well that some of the things that I have to teach, just even in GCSE maths, are quite a challenge. You have to, even for maths tutors, maths teachers, they have to spend a fair amount of time going through the content, the syllabus themselves, because they might not have seen the particular topics in quite a few years. Maybe they may not have even done it at university. And even I've got a bit of a mixed kind of journey from learning maths in primary school right up to tutoring now, because I wouldn't say that I was particularly good at maths when I was in primary school. I don't think I felt very confident about it. And I definitely wouldn't have said it was my favorite subject, but I think my confidence grew when I went into university, and there was a module that was really centered around maths, and it was particular sort of area of maths to do with standard form. And also sort of converting from one unit to another. And I really enjoyed that. So that made me a lot more confident and enabled me to do a lot better. And I think that was probably a good sort of springboard for then delving deeper into maths and learning more and being a bit more enthusiastic about it. And now I'm tutoring it. So yeah, I mean, I started off not being particularly good at maths and not feeling very confident to now where I'm teaching it for the GCSE students. So yeah, there's hope for lots of people who still think, oh well, I struggle with maths, so I find it really difficult. I think a big thing, just like with other subjects, is gaining confidence in it. It's the key thing.
Yes, of course. And I suppose that links in with, the English teaching, because again, maths and English, as they get more of them important skills, that, further education institutes like colleges and universities look for. You've got to have a basic understanding of written and spoken English. But you say that, like me in a way, and when I was reading this and I read your notes and what you sent me, I totally related to this. Like me, you didn't get into English literature until you were more of an adult. And I suppose that's true because, there are some really good classics of English literature, such as Jane Austen's, Shakespeare, Bronte's, Dickens and all that. But as a child or a younger person, you don't particularly appreciate them fantastic works as you would as a child, a child would as an
Yeah,
adult.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, another kind of strange example is because it's again it's animal based. So I was really interested in sort of marine mammals like whales when I was younger, and so a work of literature that I immediately went to and was interested in was Moby Dick,
Yeah,
which is
I
all
heard.
about
Yeah,
yeah, Herman Melville. It's all about well, partly about sperm whale hunting. So I tried to read that when I was really young. I mean, I must have been less than possibly less than 10 years old. And, I wouldn't recommend that to children because it's really it's a difficult book to understand at that age. But that was the way that was one way I could have got into reading in English literature, because it was something that I could relate to. But there's clearly, a great variety of literature that people can read. And yeah, clearly, again, some of it might not be to their taste, but I think I had a feeling of really missing out on such a variety of things. I mean, to think, like you mentioned, there's Jane Austen, or Shakespeare, and all of the things that Shakespeare had written, not just plays, but poetry as well, the sonnets, too. And to think that there was such a rich amount of literature that's out there, I didn't want to really miss out on it. So I think that's when I, becoming an adult, thinking, oh yeah, I actually want to get more involved in this. So that could be that was my sort of personal motivation for getting into it. But yeah, I think once people start with certain books, they could quite easily really get into them. And of course, many people find books that they reread and reinterpret as they go on.
And it's really interesting, like what we said, that like, as an adult, you don't really appreciate the classic. As a child, you don't appreciate the classics as much as you do when you're an adult. But I think there are being great strides coming along with that, especially in the publishing world and the industry, because I did some work with a children's publisher quite a while ago. We unfortunately now we've parted ways, but some of the work that they did was very good because they had a member of their team who was a former SEND teacher. She'd worked with people with disabilities and additional needs in schools, and through working with her, they came up with a brand, an imprint of their publishing work, where they made the classics like Moby Dick, Jane Eyre, and stuff like that easier for children with special educational needs to read and to understand them. And I suppose when you're giving a book like that to a child, it's more enjoyable for them, with lots of pictures and glossary to explain what each word means. And so there are being great strides being made in the publishing world, and which is really great because I think everyone should get the chance to enjoy these great classics.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I was thinking about the same thing, as you've just kind of explained. I mean, this is slightly off topic because it's not necessarily fiction, let's say, in terms of English literature. But I remember reading a book by Bill Bryson, which is, I think, one of his better known books, more popular books, A Short History of Nearly Everything, I think it is.
Yes.
And that is, that's a book which is aimed at, I would say, adults and upwards. Maybe people from maybe 17, possibly upwards, because that is a fairly long book. And there's some, it's very well explained, but there's some technical language as well. But I do remember seeing a version which was kind of tailored to younger people, and that did have pictures in it as well, and I think less text. And I thought that was a great idea because I found the original book really, really interesting. It's one of my favorites, and I think it would be great if there, while it is great that that particular version, newer version for younger people to, as a way to then actually get more interested perhaps in science, because that's what the main topic of the book is, the sort of history of science as well. But it seems like a brilliant idea, and I'd like to see it done more actually with other books.
Yes, of course. And hopefully more publishers will follow suit.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, so one of the things to sort of talk about is that when you're working with students, tutoring them in English, you want them to sort of develop a passion for English, because part of, the GCSE English examinations are, the A level, if you go and study a degree or an A level course in English literature, that does require you to analyse certain texts, whether it's a text from a book or a poem, or, and you say that you enjoy analysing a lot because that forms part of a PhD in the biology.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, this is quite well, I consider it quite a personal thing, you know, this interest in analysis. And yeah, so just a short thing on the PhD. Uh, the types of analysis that I have to do as part of the PhD can be quite different to the um, particular ones that you might have in English, but I have actually drawn on some of the forms of analysis that are used in English as well. So, you know, there's not such a gap between some of the things that you might do in a PhD analysis compared to, you know, what you might do in English. Um, and yeah, so I'm looking at qualitative data in my PhD thesis. So you know, a lot of it is looking at interviews and looking at documents and the language that's used in those documents. And I've as part of that drawn on the type of analysis that I would have done when I was studying English as well. So in analyzing poems or analyzing other longer texts too. And so I particularly enjoy really doing a kind of micro analysis and going down to the level of the words, individual words that might be used in English, like in a poem, and then going, you know, really trying to discern the meaning and significance of that. And that's something that in my English tuition I try and really emphasize to students, that if they want to do particularly well and get higher grades and get to that higher level, that they really need to try and focus down to the really small units, looking at the words, and even smaller than that in some way, maybe how the words are made up. And the more that they do that and make a habit of it and really elaborate on those things, the better that they're going to do.
Yeah, so thank you, Jack. It's been really interesting chatting with you again today and do this series with you as a whole. And I hope that, you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I hope, we can connect with, through this series, we can connect with further, other academics, because that's what I would like to chat more. I would like to focus my show more on educational topics that are really informative. But the final bit is, obviously we've talked about your tuition side today, and so obviously I think it'd be nice for me to, like, when this video goes out, that I sort of promote you of your tutoring services. So how can people, like, get in touch with you for tutoring?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. Some people have done that. So yeah, they can just if they just type in my name, Jack Mussard, on LinkedIn, they can find me that way. I also work for some agencies, and one of the main ones that I work for is Dulwich Tutors. So they can get in touch through them if they're interested in tutoring. But yeah, I'm happy to share my details if people are interested in getting some tuition on English, maths, or science, and entrance exams as well, like the 11 plus. So always happy to take on more people.
Oh, well, thank you, Jack. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank
And
you very
thank
much,
you
Seth.
to everyone for listening.